Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us. As participants are being admitted to the room, we'll be sharing a few short videos focusing on food safety and time temperature management. These videos we hope will help set the context for our discussion this morning. So welcome again. Thanks for joining us, and please look at these videos.
So in the previous video, we learnt about temperature danger zone and why it is important to keep food out of the temperature danger zone. Today let us understand the time and temperature abuse and our role in preventing it. Who can tell me what is the temperature danger zone?
I can. Temperature range between 5 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius.
Yes, that is correct. The temperature danger zone is the ambient temperature that every living organism enjoy. We also enjoy this range of temperature, don't we? A foodborne illness can happen if food has remained in the temperature danger zone for more than 4 hours.
So cooling these food rapidly below 5 degrees should help in controlling this.
Also, I feel that when we cook, we should cook above the 60 degrees Celsius to make sure temperature is high enough to kill the bacteria.
Both of you made some really valid points. Time is critical, so once we make any food in bulk, it is essential to cool it immediately. We must bring it below 5 degrees within 4 hours. And while reheating, remember to get the food over the temperature zone. What you need to remember in reheating is that you need to get food to 74 degrees Celsius. This is recommended to make food safe. It is very important to understand the basics of keeping food safe. So take your time to revisit the food hygiene playlist often. And do subscribe and come back to the channel to keep learning. Remember to click the bell icon so that you receive notifications.
Welcome, this is Rob Koymans of Food Safety Experts with the tip of the day. And today's tip is on temperature abuse of pallets during transportation. Do you sometimes get complaints that your pallets seem to have had a too high or a too low temperature during transportation? Of course, you can insert an automated temperature logger in each and every truck, but that might be quite costly and difficult to reclaim those. Another way to easily do this is to purchase stickers, which will change color when the temperature is either getting above a certain level or below. This way you have a nice and visual indication whether the pallet was temperature abused, yes or no. Have a look at this website for more information. Together we continue to improve food safety everywhere.
My wife said, if you win, we'll fly to Asia. If I win, we'll fly to Paris. I bet you won't get toned with just Tai Chi walking.
What is time temperature abuse? Have you ever wondered how temperature affects the safety of the food we eat? Time temperature abuse is a term that describes a situation where food, especially perishable items, is kept in a temperature range that can lead to spoilage and health risks. This range is known as the temperature danger zone, which typically falls between 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. When food is in this zone for too long, harmful bacteria can grow quickly, increasing the risk of foodborne illnesses. In the context of agriculture and food production, understanding time temperature abuse is essential. Many agricultural products are classified as time temperature control for safety foods. These include dairy products like milk and cheese, meats, poultry, seafood, cooked plant foods such as rice and potatoes, cut fruits and vegetables, and certain ready-to-eat foods. If these foods are not stored correctly, they can become unsafe to eat. Time temperature abuse happens when these foods are not kept cold enough or hot enough during storage, transport, or handling. For instance, if refrigerated foods are left out at room temperature for an extended period, or if hot foods are not maintained at sufficient heat, bacteria can multiply rapidly. This can lead to spoilage and health hazards. To prevent time temperature abuse, it is important to maintain proper temperature control throughout the food supply chain. This means keeping perishable products refrigerated at or below 41 degrees Fahrenheit from the farm to the consumer. For hot foods, they should be held at temperatures above 135 degrees Fahrenheit when applicable. Regular monitoring of storage and transport equipment is also vital. This helps avoid temperature fluctuations caused by equipment failure or human error. Minimizing the time temperature control for safety foods spend in the danger zone during processing, storage, and distribution is key. Proper packaging and handling techniques can also help maintain temperature control. Failing to manage time and temperature can lead to significant losses in agricultural food production. Spoilage can reduce shelf life and increase the risk of foodborne diseases. Therefore, effective temperature control is essential in agricultural product storage and handling. It protects food safety, maintains product quality, and reduces economic losses. Understanding time temperature abuse is a step toward ensuring the food we consume is safe and healthy.
I'm 65.
Welcome, this is Rob Koymans of Food Safety Experts with the tip of the day. And today's tip is on temperature monitoring tags. Recently, a new development has been achieved in terms of a barcode which changes its physical presence under the influence of higher or lower temperature. This is an ideal way to cost-effectively monitor temperature abuse at the product level. Have a look at this website for more information. It comes in many time and temperature ranges, as you can see here. Together we continue to improve food safety everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for viewing those videos with us. Good morning once again, and welcome to this awareness session hosted by the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, BSJ. Thank you for taking the time to join us as we explore a very important topic, temperature abuse and its implications for food safety. This session is hosted by the Bureau of Standards Jamaica through our Communication and Customer Service branch, and today the CCSB is partnering with the Microbiology branch. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica is an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, MIC, Jamaica's business ministry, and together we welcome you to this session. I am Ellis James Leng, and I'm pleased to be your moderator for today's online awareness session. This is one of the quarterly webinars designed by the CCSB of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica to help stakeholders better understand the standards that impact our businesses, our choices, our health, and indeed, our lives. This session is especially timely in light of the recent passage of Hurricane Melissa, which caused disruptions to electricity supply, refrigeration, food storage, transportation, and retail operations across much of the country. Of course, even in our homes, we all were affected, or many of us were affected. Events like these heighten the risk of what we refer to as temperature abuse, when food is exposed to temperatures outside of safe limits for extended periods. Temperature control is one of the most critical pillars of food safety. Many foods, whether fresh, cooked, chilled, frozen, or ready to eat, must be kept within specific temperature ranges to prevent the growth of harmful microorganisms. Now, when these controls break down, food may still look acceptable, smell acceptable, even taste acceptable, yet be unsafe for consumption. In fact, I never knew the word temperature or the term temperature abuse until very recently. The risks associated with unsafe food affect every single one of us, but they are particularly serious for vulnerable and immunocompromised individuals. This includes people living with or undergoing treatment for cancer, persons living with HIV/AIDS, and those with other illnesses or weakened immune systems. For these individuals, consuming unsafe food can result in more severe illnesses, longer recovery periods, and in some cases, life-threatening complications. What the Bureau of Standards Jamaica is hoping that today's session will do is to support householders, to support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises and food operators in general in making informed, safe decisions, especially during emergency and recovery periods, such as we are undertaking now, so that food safety is never compromised. Of course, it does not only require, or it's not only in the times of challenge like this, but in our regular operations, there may be situations where we compromise the safety of our health because of temperature abuse. Before we proceed, just a few housekeeping matters. We ask that you keep your microphones muted unless you're going to be speaking. If you wish to contribute verbally, please use a raise hand feature. And during this session, while the presentation is going on, you may submit questions at any time using the chat, and we'll address them during the chat and during the question and answer segment. Now, that has been a mouthful, and I hope that you have not had any food on your desk that is out of the safe zone. Learning is always more effective when it's engaging and interactive, and so to help us get warmed up and settled into this session, I now invite Ms. Deidre Taylor. She is the manager of the Quality Institute, Bureau of Standards Jamaica, who will lead us in a brief, interactive, yet informative icebreaker. Deidre, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Are you hearing me clearly?
Hearing you, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so let us see how much you know about food safety. Know you're here to learn, but it's going to be an interactive session, as Mr. Leng said, and that requires participation on your part. So if you'll just look on the screen, I want you to take part in what we call a Mentimeter activity. All right, so if you have a separate device, you can scan the QR code, or you can just go to menti.com and enter the code that you're seeing below. I'm seeing quick fingers. I'm seeing where some persons have already joined. All right, I want to see yes, the numbers are going up. All right. We're passionate about food safety here at the Bureau, so we want to see where the gaps are in terms of knowledge, so that we can do what we need to do to help you. All right. 21 persons have joined so far. I want more persons to join before I start. All right, let's go. What comes to your mind when you hear about temperature abuse in food safety? I know Mr. Leng would have said some stuff before, right? So you don't necessarily have to repeat what he said. Before coming to this session, what came to your mind when you heard about temperature abuse? Because this term has been used in different spaces. So just go ahead and enter your response. When you type what comes to your mind, just click send or submit. Not healthy. Spoilage is big. Just for your information, the larger the font, the writing rather, the more respondents we have saying the same thing. So far, bacteria and spoilage are leading. Yes, foodborne illness, danger zone. Yes, you're using up big terms. Improper storage condition, food going off, not healthy. Sounding good so far. Sounding good. Frostbite. Okay, I love that one. All right. Thawing and refreezing. And I want you guys to remember that one because that will come up later on in this session. Pathogen. Yes. Have some bright people on, man. All right. Let's go to the next slide. Share a quick example of a situation where temperature abuse could happen in a kitchen. In a kitchen, share a quick example. There are so many examples of temperature abuse in a kitchen. And let me give you a hint. We were talking about it on the radio recently. Get up early on a Sunday or a Saturday to go to church, and we take stuff out. Fill in the blanks. Having chicken on the counter, cooked food left on the stove. When cooked food is left on the stove for hours, unattended without the proper temperature being maintained. Let me scroll down. Meat left thawing out on the counter. I'm seeing thawing coming up several times. So we are understanding the conversation that is about to take place now. All right, very good, very good. Defrosting food all day. And recently for Christmas, how many of you didn't know what to do with your ham? So you left it out all day instead of putting it at the bottom of the refrigerator. All right. Which of these is a safe temperature range for storing perishable foods? Which of these is a safe temperature range for, okay. So far, everybody is saying below 5 degrees Celsius. All right, there's no shame, no judgment. I see I'm not sure. Okay. Looking good so far. Someone has between 5 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius. All right. Sure about that? Why you write that? All right. But most of the respondents are saying below 5 degrees Celsius. And that's the ideal temperature for chilled and frozen products. Frozen products, you're looking at minus 18 degrees Celsius, right? So when you're seeing it positive but low, then you know that's chill temperature. All right? So yes, below 5 degrees Celsius is good for storing perishable foods. 5 to 60 is actually where you don't want to have the food for left unattended for a long time. We're wrapping up now. Rank these foods from most to least likely to be affected by temperature abuse. I mean, the first one I think is a giveaway. Which one of these items is most likely to be affected by temperature abuse? Raw chicken, dairy products. So raw chicken is leading. Dairy products is leading. I know why you have raw chicken leading, because the question did say which food is likely to be affected, right? But you're thinking, we are likely to be affected by raw chicken. So I understand why that one is leading, right? Cooked rice and fresh salad are almost neck and neck. All right. I'm seeing where your thoughts are. Good stuff. think this one is the last one now. How confident are you in identifying signs of temperature abuse in food? So indicate if you are confident at all, somewhat confident, not so sure, or you're very confident that you can identify signs of temperature abuse. And recognize, as Mr. Ling said earlier, sometimes you can't smell it. Sometimes you can't see it, right? Sometimes you can't even taste it, which is what you would think would be the ultimate symptom, right? You can taste that it's going off. No. Sometimes you can't taste it, you can't smell it, and you definitely can't see it. Right? So when you go to middle quarters and you get the nice peppered shrimp, you definitely will not be able to taste it beyond all that pepper. You won't see it. You won't smell it. So think, are you truly confident that you'll be able to identify signs of temperature abuse in food, right? So, alrighty. Oh, we had another one. And this will be our last. What's one challenge you face in keeping food at the correct temperature? One challenge. I know you may have several options, but in the interest of time, each person give me just one challenge that you face in keeping food at the correct temperature. And let me give you a hint. With the passage of Melissa, many persons were without. JPS always cutting the light. All right, I think I know where this is going to go, right? I don't want them to say the Bureau is picking on JPS today.
Precisely, we don't want any lawsuits from our colleagues there at all.
All right, that's it for me signing out for now.
Thank you, Deidre. Thank you so much, and thanks to all of you, all 43 of you who participated. Several persons sent in their responses, and I really hope that we were able to get some key concepts in at that point and to understand some of the things. But guess what? No shame in your game. As Deidre said, we are here to learn, all of us together. Now, some persons have greater experience, knowledge, background, and some of us are coming up through the ranks, and the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, as part of what we do, making these sessions available to our stakeholders free of cost so that our stakeholders can improve their processes and consumers can stay safe. So, thanks again, Deidre. Years ago, when Mrs. Louise Bennett Coverley, Miss Lou was around, they would say to her, clap her. So yes, let us just show some love to Deidre for that session. And now we are going to be moving into the main presentation, the meat of the matter, or the milk of the matter, or is it the rice and peas of the matter? But we are moving into the main presentation. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for this morning. She is a senior analyst at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica and serves as one of our members of the Public Education Planning Squad, or PEP Squad. She's going to pep you up with information today. She has presented in several of our sessions and has come to us with quite a bit of experience. She has over 12 years experience across both the private sector and the public sector. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry with a minor in food processing. And so she really comes to us equipped to give us the skills or to share the experience, to share the information, and to help us better. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the virtual stage our presenter for this morning, Miss Shantor Rose. Make her welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Ling. So as Mr. Lang would have said, I am Shantoy Rose, and I will be presenting this morning on temperature abuse and its implications for food safety. Can somebody just indicate that they're hearing me, Mr. Lang, right here?
Hearing and seeing, and your presentation is
Yes. All right, thank
yes,
you.
all is well.
All right, thank you. So based on that icebreaker that Miss Taylor would have just done, we see where a lot of us have some understanding of what temperature abuse is about. And there are some of us who might not be so confident in our knowledge of what temperature abuse is about. So this morning, I'm just going to go through this presentation. And for those who already have knowledge, it is just to solidify what you know and to add as well if there are things that I would have presented that you don't know. And for those who don't know, after this presentation, we'll all be able to understand what temperature abuse is and ways that we can prevent it. So somebody's mic is unmuted. Can you mute? All right, so temperature abuse and its implication for food safety. Understanding the risk, consequences, and prevention strategies. So the objectives of our presentation today, so by the end of this session, participants will be able to understand temperature danger zone and how time and temperature affects bacterial growth, identify high-risk foods and common causes of temperature abuse in various food industries, recognize the health and business consequences of poor temperature control. They'll be able to apply practical food safety measures during normal operations and emergency situations, including post-hurricane scenarios, as well as implement monitoring and documentation practices to maintain safe food temperatures and comply with food safety guidelines. So before we get into temperature abuse, let's just look at what food safety is and why it matters. So food safety is about preventing illness caused by unsafe foods, right? So harmful bacteria can grow in food if it is not handled properly. So the food, as presenters before would have mentioned, they may look, smell, and even taste normal, but they can still be unsafe. Foodborne illness can affect anyone and may be serious. So really, food safety takes into consideration spoilage organisms as well as pathogenic organisms. So that's really what we are concerned about when we speak of food safety. And these organisms, once we consume foods that have them, then we can become ill. Now, foodborne illnesses happen, as I said, when harmful bacteria grow in our food. So bacteria are naturally present in our environment, so they're everywhere. So they're in the farm, they're on the animals that are butchered to make meat. So they're everywhere. They can enter food during preparation, during storage, or during handling. So poor hygiene and poor temperature control allow bacteria to multiply. Safe food handling protects our health, it protects our families, and it protects our communities. So we want to ensure that when we're handling food, we are observing proper hygiene and we're storing our food at the right temperature. Now, how does temperature affect bacteria? Bacteria grows, well, some bacteria grow best at warm temperatures. So many harmful bacteria grow fastest at temperatures similar to body temperature. This is why when food is left at room temperature, it becomes risky. The longer the food stays warm, the higher the risk. So that pot of rice that we cooked early Sunday morning and we don't eat until later in the day, that pot of rice that we leave on the stove at about room temperature, if there's organisms in there, it can multiply, and the bacterial growth that's in there can multiply and become harmful to us. Now, bacteria grows at different speeds depending on temperature. So cold temperatures, bacteria grows slower. At warm temperatures, the bacteria grows quickly. And at very hot temperatures, bacteria is killed or they stop growing. Now, the further we go down into the presentation, we will understand what cold, warm, and very hot temperatures in this case means. So warm food plus time equals rapid bacterial growth. Now let's look at what temperature abuse is. So temperature abuse occurs when food is kept in the temperature danger zone for too long, allowing harmful bacteria to grow. Now, what is this temperature danger zone that we speak about? It's approximately 5 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius, or 41 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So if food is kept at this temperature range for too long, then that is referred to as temperature abuse. So what we want to do is to minimize the time food spends in the temperature danger zone to prevent bacterial growth and reduce the risk of foodborne illnesses. So right here we have this chart that speaks of bacterial growth risks. So it speaks of the risk on the y-axis and the temperature on the x-axis. So right here with this column represents food that is stored at cold temperatures or less than 5 degrees Celsius. That's what we're referring to when we say cold. So here we're seeing where the risk, bacterial growth risk, is very low, as well as at very hot temperatures of above 60 degrees Celsius, in comparison to the danger zone, which is between 5 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius. We're seeing where the bacterial growth, this column here, is greatly increased in comparison to the other temperatures. So this chart shows how temperature affects the risk of bacterial growth. So at cold temperatures of below 5 degrees Celsius, bacteria grows very slowly, so the risk is low. In the temperature range between 5 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius, represented by this column, which is often referred to as the danger zone, bacteria grows much more quickly, which greatly increases the risk of contamination. Now, at high temperatures, above 60 degrees Celsius, the risk decreases again because the heat kills the bacteria or prevents them from growing. So overall, the chart highlights why keeping the food and water either very cold or very hot is important for safety. Now, some common causes of temperature abuse. One common cause is improper refrigeration or improper heating of food. Now, refrigerators may be set too warm, or they may be overloaded, which reduces cooling efficiency. Or we can have hot foods that may not be kept hot enough during holding or service, allowing bacteria to grow. So we do not want our refrigerators to be too warm or overloaded. And we want our foods, when we're heating it, or when we have hot foods, to be held at a temperature that will not allow the bacterial growth to grow rapidly. Now, leaving food at room temperature for too long is also a common cause of temperature abuse. Food left out during preparation, during cooling, or serving can quickly enter the danger zone. Bacteria multiply rapidly when food remains between 5 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius for extended periods of time. Other common causes include inadequate temperature control during transport. So it's not just about preparation of the food, we also have to ensure that we are keeping the temperature within the correct range during transport. So food transported without insulated containers, ice, or heating units can warm up and cool down too quickly. Lack of temperature checks during delivery increases the risk of unnoticed abuse. Now, equipment failure or power outage, as we would have mentioned even in the icebreaker, is a common cause of temperature abuse. Broken or poorly maintained equipment may not maintain safe temperatures, and power outages can cause rapid temperature increase in refrigerators and freezers if not managed properly. Now, most cases of temperature abuse are preventable and usually occurs during everyday activities like storing your food, preparing your food, transport, or equipment failure. This chart here speaks of bacterial growth versus temperature. So this graph shows the temperature, how temperature affects the growth of a microorganism. So for mesophilic organisms at very low temperature, represented here, the organism grows very slowly because its internal processes are slowed down. As the temperature increases, growth improves and reaches its highest peak at about 37 degrees Celsius, which appears to be the most suitable temperature for growth. And we know that is like room temperature. So if we leave our food out, then we understand why that can cause rapid growth of bacteria, because these mesophilic organisms, they enjoy living in that temperature. That's where they are most comfortable and where they grow most rapidly. Now, when the temperature is raised to 60 degrees Celsius, growth drops sharply, likely because the heat damages the organism and prevents it from functioning properly. Overall, the results show that the organism grows best at moderate temperatures and is negatively affected by extreme heat or cold. So some implications of temperature abuse to food safety. We have increased risk of foodborne illnesses. So when food is kept too long in the temperature danger zone, bacteria can multiply rapidly and cause illnesses. Growth of harmful bacteria is also an implication. So this includes pathogens such as our Salmonella or E. coli, Listeria monocytogenes, Staphylococcus aureus, Bacillus cereus, and Clostridium perfringens. So these harmful bacteria can grow and result in foodborne illnesses. Reduced shelf life and food quality. So even if the food does not make someone sick, bacterial growth can cause spoilage, off odors, and poor texture. Legal and financial consequences for businesses is also an implication. Now, this is where poor temperature control can lead to product recalls, fines, loss of reputation, and consumer trust. And no business wants to have to recall the product. So we want to ensure that we're ensuring that the temperature that we're storing food, preparing food, and handling food is correct, so that we don't have to do any recalls. You know, you can damage your brand, damage your reputation, and customer trust. So some special concern, spore-forming bacteria. So there are some bacteria such as our Bacillus cereus and Clostridium species that can form spores. Spores can survive cooking even at high temperatures. So when food cools slowly or is stored incorrectly, these spores can germinate and grow rapidly. Now, during temperature abuse, these bacteria may produce toxins that are not destroyed by reheating. This is why proper cooling, cold storage, and reheating practices are critical, especially for cooked food. So what this is saying, that we have some organisms that produce spores. Now, if you keep your food at a temperature within the danger zone, then these spores can germinate and grow rapidly. And even when you heat up the food, then the spores will not be killed off, so it can cause some sort of illness, right? So some practical examples. So we have cooked rice or pasta that's left at room temperature. Bacillus cereus is commonly found in rice and in pasta. Now, if these foods are left out too long after cooking, the bacteria can grow and produce toxins that cause vomiting or diarrhea. And reheating may not be enough to make the food safe. There's also large pots of foods and foods that cool too slowly is a practical example. So where dishes like soups, your stews, and your curries that are left to cool slowly allow bacteria to multiply quickly in the danger zone. Buffet or catered foods is also a practical example. Now, foods kept warm, but they're not hot enough. So they're warm enough, they're not hot enough. Or cold foods that are not kept cold enough, like our salads, are especially at high risk. Now, speaking of high risk, how time and temperature increase the risk. Bacteria grow fastest in the danger zone, as we would have stated before. The longer the food stays in the range, the higher the risk. So up to 2 hours, the risk begins to increase. 2 to 4 hours, food should be used immediately. Over 4 hours is considered high risk and food should be discarded. Looking at some high-risk foods now. So some foods allow bacteria to grow very quickly if not kept at safe temperatures. An example of this high-risk food is cooked rice and pasta. Another example are dairy products such as our milk, cream, soft cheeses, and our custards. We have cooked meats and poultry, which are high-risk foods. Soup, stews, sauces, and gravies, seafood, and ready-to-eat foods such as our sandwiches and our salads. So these foods are high in moisture and nutrients, making them ideal for bacterial growth. So they already have the moisture, they already have the nutrients that they need, and if we're keeping them in the danger zone, which is between 5 degrees and 60 degrees Celsius, or most commonly we keep them at room temperature, this is where they're comfortable and they're going to grow. Food illness and possible outcomes, foodborne illnesses and possible outcomes. So foodborne illnesses can range from mild to life-threatening. Examples are gastroenteritis, where we have vomiting, diarrhea, and stomach cramps, dehydration and hospitalization, miscarriage or stillbirth, which can result from listeria contamination, long-term complications, paralysis, death in severe cases. So foodborne illnesses are not always mild. The consequences can be severe. High-risk groups, so some persons are more vulnerable to these foodborne illnesses. We have our babies and our young children. They are one of the most vulnerable groups. We have elderly people, pregnant women, and immunocompromised individuals. So those persons are persons who can be cancer patients, transplant recipients, and people with HIV whose immune system are already compromised. So why time and temperature control is critical? Now, bacteria are naturally present in many foods and in the environment. So when food is kept at unsafe temperatures, bacteria can multiply rapidly. High-risk foods provide ideal conditions for this growth. The longer food remains in the temperature danger zone, the greater the risk of illness. Most food safety incidents are not caused by contamination alone, but by poor control of time and temperature during preparation, storage, or service. Common causes of temperature abuse. Temperature abuse happens when food is kept at unsafe temperatures. So food left at room temperature for too long or common causes, improper refrigeration or overloaded fridge, hot food not kept hot enough during service, food cooling down too slowly after cooking, inadequate reheating, power failures or equipment breakdowns, and poor temperature monitoring or lack of training. Now, some industry-specific examples of temperature abuse. In restaurants, you have improper hot holding on buffets, slow cooling of cooked foods such as soup, sauces, rice, or pasta, or overloaded or poorly functioning refrigerators. Now, in catering, some examples of temperature abuse can be inadequate temperature control during transport events, extended holding times before service, hot foods not reheated to safe temperatures, or cold foods displayed without sufficient cooling. Other for food manufacturing industry, some examples of temperature abuse: breaks in the cold chain during storage or distribution, equipment calibration or monitoring failures, delays during processing or packaging, or inadequate temperature control during loading and unloading. Now, how do we prevent temperature abuse? So we've spoken a lot about what temperature abuse is and common causes. Now, how do we prevent it? We prevent it by keeping cold foods below 5 degrees Celsius and hot foods above 60 degrees Celsius. We use calibrated thermometers to check the temperature. We monitor storage and transport temperatures. We limit holding times. We follow the first in, first out rule. And we train staff on food safety practices. So continuing on prevention of temperature abuse, we check temperatures regularly. As we said, we use a food thermometer to monitor fridges, freezers, and cooked foods. Keep foods hot foods hot, and cold foods cold, and we limit time at room temperature. Cool food quickly. Now we divide large portions into smaller containers so that they can cool rapidly. We refrigerate promptly. Store food properly, so we keep refrigerators organized and not overloaded. Cover and label food with dates, and when in doubt, throw it out. So never risk illness to save food. So if you have a bottle of milk in the refrigerator and you're questioning whether it's still good, it look a little, color change a bit, the smell is off, so we use our senses as well. We don't just say, oh, I just put it in there 2 days ago. We use our senses to try to figure out, okay, is this still good? And when in doubt, you throw it out. Now, preventing temperature abuse doesn't require expensive equipment, just awareness, basic tools, and good habits. So at home, this is just to show us how we do it at home versus in the business. Some of it is what we would have said before, but just a reminder, at home you use food thermometer to check your leftovers, refrigerate food within 2 hours, avoid overloading the refrigerator, reheat food thoroughly before eating, and when in doubt, throw it out. For small businesses, we need to record fridge, freezer, and hot holding temperatures with calibrated thermometers. We need to limit time food spends at room temperature during preparation. We need to maintain equipment and ensure proper airflow. Follow approved reheating and hot holding procedures, and discard food that exceeds time temperature limits. Now, alignment with food safety. So we want to see how temperature abuse aligns with food safety guidelines. So we have HACCP, which is our hazard analysis and critical control points. So we need to identify the critical control points where temperature control is essential. And once we identify those critical control points, we monitor the time and temperature consistently and take corrective action when limits are exceeded. For FDA food code, we follow temperature danger zone requirements, maintain proper hot holding and cold holding temperatures, and use approved methods for cooling and reheating foods. For the World Health Organization, keep foods at safe temperatures, avoid prolonged exposure to unsafe conditions, and apply good hygiene and temperature control throughout food handling. So a practical takeaway checklist. So check and record temperatures regularly. So keep logs for refrigerators or freezers, hot holding equipment, and cooked foods. Act immediately when food enters the danger zone. So we want to discard, reheat, or cool rapidly according to protocol. Train staff on temperature control procedures, So ensure everyone understands the danger zone and safe handling practices. Maintain and calibrate equipment routinely. Refrigerators, freezers, thermometers, and hot holding units must be accurate. So why natural disasters increase food safety risk where temperature abuse is concerned? Temperature abuse after a hurricane. So hurricanes and severe storms often cause power outages, flooding, and infrastructure damage. These disruptions can prevent proper refrigeration and hot holding, increasing bacterial growth. Food left in the temperature danger zone for extended periods is at high risk for contamination. So planning for emergency food safety is critical to prevent illnesses. So post-hurricane risk factors, we have extended power outages. Now refrigerators and freezers, if we don't have any electricity, will stop working and food enters the danger zone. Flooding is also a risk factor. Flooding can contaminate food, storage area, and equipment. And limited resources is also a risk factor where reduced access to ice, fuel, or backup generators is a concern. Disrupted supply chain is another risk factor where delayed food deliveries, cold chain is compromised in this instance. Staff challenges where reduced staff capacity, less monitoring, and slower response can occur. So even if food was safe before the storm, loss of refrigeration or prolonged exposure to unsafe temperatures can quickly turn into a health hazard. So some food safety implications after a storm. Rapid bacterial growth, where perishable foods can quickly enter the danger zone and multiply bacteria. So, if our light is out, we don't have any refrigerator to store our perishable items at temperatures below 5 degrees Celsius, so that can result in rapid bacterial growth. Increased risk of foodborne illness outbreaks, so we have a higher likelihood of vomiting, diarrhea, and other illnesses in the community. Food spoilage and loss is also a food safety implication. The significant economic and nutritional impact due to discarded foods. Vulnerable populations, displaced people, elderly, and immunocompromised individuals are at a higher risk. Regulatory and public health concerns is also a food safety implication, where violations of food safety standards can lead to fines, recalls, and health emergencies. So foods at higher risk after power loss, or meats or poultry or seafoods, which are highly perishable, are at a higher risk because if we don't have any power, then we will not be able to store the food at the right temperature. Dairy products and eggs, milk, cream, soft cheeses, custards, for example, are foods at higher risk because bacteria is able to multiply rapidly because we're not able to store them at chilled temperatures that we need to store them at, or for ice cream and so at refrigerated temperatures. So cooked rice, pasta, and prepared foods. High risk for Bacillus cereus and other spore-forming bacteria, as we would have mentioned before. Or cut fruits and vegetables are also foods at high risk and are ready-to-eat refrigerated foods. So some post-hurricane food safety recommendation. Discard perishable food items. So any item held above 5 degrees Celsius for more than 4 hours, discard them. That should have been held at chill temperature, discard it. When in doubt, throw it out. So do not risk consuming food that may be unsafe. So if we feel like, say, something is not good anymore, throw it out. Avoid flood-exposed food. Food that came into contact with flood water should be discarded. Verify temperatures before resuming operation. So we need to check our refrigeration unit, our freezers, and hot holding equipment. Document losses and corrective actions. So keep records for compliance and to support food safety planning. After a hurricane, it's crucial to prioritize food safety over salvaging food. Following these steps protects consumers and ensure compliance with safety standards. So how do you prevent temperature abuse after a power outage? So during the outage, we want to keep our refrigerator and our freezer doors closed as much as possible. We use ice, coolers, or dry ice if available, and we want to monitor time without power. After power is restored, we want to check internal food temperatures before use. Discard perishable foods above 5 degrees Celsius for more than 4 hours, and never consume food exposed to flood water. For businesses, we want to verify equipment if working properly before reopening. We want to document discarded food and corrective actions. And if you are unsure how long food was without refrigeration, do not risk it. So whether at home or in business, preventing temperature abuse is about quick action, awareness, and putting safety before saving food. Businesses want to verify equipment. Okay, we would have gone through this part already, so let me just skip it. So in conclusion, temperature control is critical to food safety. Proper handling, monitoring, and staff training significantly reduces the risk of temperature abuse. Maintaining safe food temperatures protects consumers, protects our staff, and it protects your businesses. So keeping food at the right temperature isn't just a rule, it's the single most effective way to prevent illness, protect the vulnerable people, and maintain trust in your business or service. So just some reminders before I close. If food isn't kept at the right temperature, it isn't just spoiled, it's unsafe. Temperature abuse is invisible, or it can be invisible sometimes, but the consequences aren't. One small temperature mistake can turn a good meal into a bad memory. Respect the temperature, protect your health. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I am now going to hand over to our moderator, Mr. Lee.
Thank you so much, Chantal. Thank you so much for this information. Wow. Let me see, just about 35 minutes, you have made me know that I now need to not eat food. I'm not sure how I'm going to manage. But thank you for the presentation, Chantal. And we have several questions, I'm sure, that will come. And your last slide gave us some powerful reminders. But the one that stands out for me, which was not on the slide, and I wonder if anybody could just drop it in the chat. It wasn't on the last slide, but she said it a few times well. So let me just watch the chat to see if the most powerful reminder that I heard from Chantal is going to come in. Quite an easy line for us to remember. Yes, O'Shane. Thank you. Yes, everybody, I'm sure, is going to leave with that line. When in doubt, leave it out. And I think that could simply be the essence of this presentation. When we have doubt about it, we throw it out. But to help us look at the issues that have been shared today, joining Chantal Rose will be Deidre Taylor and Dion Price, who will be prepared to respond to questions that you may have. So inviting Shantoy Rose, Deidre Taylor, and Dion Price to come online. I'm not sure that Mrs. Stacey Thelwell is able to join us, but if she is in the room and able to join us, then certainly she will form a part of the panel. If we have questions, this is an opportunity. I'm going to ask you to use the raise hand feature. Use the raise hand feature. We will acknowledge you and ask you to proceed. And of course, because it comes in the order in which you raise your hands, once we're finished with one speaker, we will go to the next. So we are recognizing Laurie Lee Dobson and asking Laurie Lee to go ahead with her question.
Good morning, everyone. My question is, I collect food samples from the cafeteria and I'm wondering if the food is eaten. So I'm wondering is, when I collect the food, do I need to allow it to cool at room temperature before stirring it in the igloo to send to microwave for testing?
Who's going to take that, Shantoy or Deidre Dion? And Laurie Lee, when you say you collect samples for what purpose?
So I collect food samples for microwave testing.
Right. All right, fine. Who's going to take that question?
Okay. Oh, Dion was
Good
waiting.
morning.
All right, go ahead.
Right. So, good morning, Lorraine. Since it's for testing, and I would say no, you would not want to wait to cool it before, because what we're really trying to capture is the number of microorganisms in the product at the time when you sampled it. So we're actually trying to almost put the bacteria in a state of stasis, and then we test from there. So you wouldn't need to cool it. If you leave it to cool, then you're actually going to allow time for the microbes to increase. And that might actually give us a false representation of the microbes that are there.
Thank you, Dion. Acknowledging Kimara Gentles, please go ahead.
Hi, morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yes, so it's not necessarily a question, but something that happened to me, and I think it can just be a little bit of information for everybody else. So for the most part, the refrigerators that are being produced this time, they already have like the gauge where you can set the temperatures at. What recently happened to me last year, and it's just because I'm a little bit versed in my field, and you know how the fridge should feel when you open it and the freeze and stuff like that. So the temperature reading was showing what it was supposed to be set at, but it didn't feel that way, right? And I just after doing some checks or whatever the case is, I realized that the fridge needed a compressor because it wasn't pushing enough through it. So I just want us to be aware that even though we set the temperatures at different intervals, we still need to use our temperature, because I have a small business. So we still need to use our temperature thermometers, and I have a refrigerator thermometer in there that actually stays in there. So sometimes you just watch it if it's going down or if it's going up, stuff like that, just to keep abreast of what's happening with it, because it really threw me for a loop, because I would have think that it would have went down, and it would tell me that because it make noise when the door is open. You get what I'm saying? So it not being the right temperature inside, but if the compressor isn't working and it can't produce the right information to the fridge, you just have to pay attention to that. So that was just my little 2 cents, that we just don't always just work with whatever is on the refrigerator. For the most part, still do our checks, because it helps a lot, because I could have lost a lot of products if I wasn't vigilant and paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kimara. We certainly do appreciate that. And that's wisdom, that's business wisdom, that's experience coming out. And we are happy that you shared that with us as well. Thanks. And we are acknowledging at this point Nadra Hamilton. Please go ahead. Nadra, are you able to unmute? All right, so Oshane, please go ahead. Oshane was the first out of the blocks. So when in doubt, leave it out or throw it out. Please go ahead, Oshane.
Good morning, everyone. Are you hearing me clearly?
Hearing you clearly.
Awesome. Well, I had a question. Well, it's not necessarily a question, but I guess it is. I noticed the presentation, we would have mostly used the reference as the international standard of 5 to 60. However, locally here, the public health requirement is 4.4, between 4.4 and 63.7 degrees Celsius. So I just want to know, when it comes to our local standards, from the Bureau of Standards perspective, is that the one that we use locally, or do we stick to the international standard? I am aware theoretically of the international standards and the plus and minus 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, but I just want to know locally where we are with that.
Deidre?
Very good question. That is something we have a challenge navigating. But so 4.4 is actually not off from what she said earlier, because she did indicate that 5 to 60 is the temperature danger zone. So it's below 5 that is ideal. So in terms of calculating from Fahrenheit to Celsius, I think that's where there'll be some discrepancy, because then I think 40 degrees Fahrenheit would give roughly 4.4. But it's always best to use the lowest or the strictest standard, because even though the Ministry of Health is what would supersede every other standard here locally, you will need to know the requirements of other stakeholders.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Oshane. Thank you for participating. Nadra, if you're able to go ahead
Good
now,
morning,
please.
everyone. I'm able to unmute now.
All
My
right, fine.
question is, when chilled goods get to the supermarkets, for example, the juices and stuff like that, the presenter had spoken about overloading of the refrigerators. Oftentimes when you go to the supermarkets, even with the meat, you see them piled up way to the top. And that's basically at room temperature. Likewise for other chilled products. Is there any regulatory bodies that are actually monitoring these activities? What obligations are there for when customers buy them and then they get sick?
Deidre, acknowledging you, please go ahead.
All right, so yes, so the regulatory body, we can never overemphasize, because persons still refer to them as the Bureau inspectors. All right, so the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority, NCRA, they were formerly known as the inspectors of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. They do regulate packaged products, which would include your juices and different meat kind that you referenced. Definitely the Ministry of Health does do their regulation as well. And once products are being stored in a warehouse commercial facility, then you also have the Food Storage and Prevention of Infestation
Division.
FSPID, Food Storage Prevention of Infestation Division, right? And that's also under our Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. So you have several agencies and entities that do ensure enforcement of the different standards. However, we do recognize the challenges that exist, and that is usually because there are resource constraints in the different agencies. What I would implore you to do is ensure that once you get the product, you do what is required to ensure food safety to protect your health. So if it's something that should be consumed warm, you know that you cook properly. If it's something that should be kept cold, then you ensure that you keep it on your refrigerator, etc. But many times you'll find that the temperatures, even though they are not ideal in the supermarkets, the whole time is not long enough to cause significant health challenges.
All right, thank you for that, Deidre. We appreciate that response, and we acknowledge Carlton Lawrence. And immediately after Carlton, Colin O'Brien. Carlton, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for this very edifying session. Question, in production of juices, how does the introduction of preservative affect my suitable temperature, if it does any at all?
Which one of our panelists will take that question? And there's also a question in the chat, so I'm just drawing that to your attention. But Carlton's question, is there a taker?
Carlton, I think what I would say is that the preservatives, whilst the microorganisms may be reduced significantly, I think it is what you'd say, you have to take a risk-based approach. Depending on the type of juice, I found that some juices may have preservatives, but yet the microbial load in it is able to overcome the preservative that's already in it, and therefore the juice still is able to spoil rather quickly, irrespective of the temperature that you're holding it at. So I feel like one of the things that I think about when I think about fresh juices especially is that it, even irrespective of it having preservative, if it is not that it is probably like pasteurized or something like that, I would be safe and put it in the refrigerator in terms of storage temperatures, simply because the microbes that you have in there, I tell people this all the time, I said, bacteria don't read textbook. So we can say, oh, we have this nice, preservative, and the bacteria is like, oh, that's nice, but I'm still gonna grow anyway. So I like to believe that because of that and the unknown that is there, I would want to say that juices, especially fresh juices, because we know that they're going to be coming in with yeast on them, they're going to be coming in with mold, they're going to have different plethora of microbes. You want to keep it at the lower temperatures possible so that you will give your juice the right amount of time in terms of your shelf life. And then the other thing to realize is that because it is a juice, you have a lot of simple sugars. So that is prime breeding ground for microbes. They're like, I don't have to work for the food. It's already in the simplest form. And you enjoy juice, so does the bacteria.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm going to just allow Deidre to jump in, Colin, before we take your question. Go ahead.
Very good. What Dion said, and just to add to that, Colin, what I have found in my personal experience, many persons making juice do not necessarily understand how the additives work. So, for example, sodium benzoate, many persons love to go and give me some benzoate, give me some benzoate. But if you don't have an acidic environment, the sodium benzoate is not really going to be effective, right? So you have to be mindful of the composition of your juice. There's a lot of science that goes behind the use of preservatives. So if you don't necessarily understand the science behind your product formulation, just stick to what Mrs. Price said and work with the temperature management, because your preservative may just be another additive.
All right, thank you for that. And no, thank you for that. I trust that Carlton is comfortable with those two responses. And now we hear from Colin.
I am, thanks.
Good.
Greetings, everyone. All right, so my question is regarding to eggs and fruits. How at risk are we, like when you see if eggs selling from the van back in the sun, or the fruits on the roadside in the sun type in the plastic bag? How at risk are we with those stuff?
I see Dion smiling. I'm not sure if that means that she's taking that question or if it Deidre is nodding her head. So let me hear the responses coming from you.
I think me and Deidre are probably going to tag team it. So that is always very interesting, especially because I have purchased fruit from the Fun Box as well, like every other Jamaican. But I think it's a tricky question though. Again, it comes with there is a risk. I think one of the things about eggs, I mean, a lot of times we don't know how the eggs are treated before they get to the pan back, and that can create a problem. So sometimes what you find is that because you might have an egg person that you buy from and you notice, oh, they're not being sold refrigerated, and you leave them on, your shelf, you leave them on your counter, and they're fine for a really long time. But majority of the time, those eggs probably are just wiped off. They're not wiped off wet. They don't get wet at all. They're not washed. Some people like to wash the eggs and not realizing that that removes that nice protective layer around the egg and then makes it porous, and then bacteria can get in there and then it starts to spoil. And so when you buy it from the back, I think we want to have some questions as to how your product is treated. And the truth is, there's also, I think, we could say no. If you've been buying from this person over a period of time, oftentimes you can tell how they've been handling it based on your experience with how frequently you're getting spoilage after you purchase. With regards to fruits, though, there are some fruits that, especially the ones that have a higher water content, you're gonna have spoilage a lot more quickly. I don't know if I've had this experience where maybe you buy sugarcane from a sugarcane man, but they already had it cut up and put aside, and then you open the bag and it smells very fermented. The fermentation process has already started, and that's because, as we know, there's yeast on the outside of the sugarcane, and so when you cut it, that yeast now has access to the beautiful juices of the sugarcane and starts to ferment it in the bag, and it's in the hot sun, and maybe it was, by the time you get to it, they peel it at midday, but you're getting to it at 5 o'clock. So I feel like the risk depends. How long have they been out there with the fruits? What kind of fruit is it? Is it being held, as I said, in the hot sun? Did they cut the fruit recently? So, for example, watermelon is one of those things, watermelon and cantaloupe. Whenever you cut that watermelon, cut that cantaloupe, just know that in a few hours, you're going to start having the yeast that are probably on the outside of the watermelon or cantaloupe have now started to attack the juices. And as you know, it is very full of juice. And then that now starts to ferment, and that fermentation process starts to spoil the product. And because it's watermelon, the truth is that the juice is running throughout the watermelon. And so the microbes are actually able to not just be on the outside. Like a block of cheese, you have mold growing and you can cut it off. But for something like a watermelon, the microbes are actually able to pass through the product itself and cause spoilage deeper into the fruit. So what I would say is that you have to use your eyes, use your senses, and also track record. You have to, I feel like, observe how somebody handles something, observe if they're aware of different foods, because the truth is a lot of Jamaicans are aware of food safety protocols. I find Jamaicans to be actually very aware. We like things clean. We don't like to cross-contaminate a lot. And so I find that if we are aware of how our vendors are handling our products, then we can feel a lot more safe buying from them. So as I said, I believe you have to take a risk-based approach. You're going to be looking at, there's some things that are relatively safe, relatively stable. When you think of a papaya, for example, that is now probably turned it not very, very ripe. You're looking at things like oranges. You're not going to have, those aren't risky. The risk is going to come from the dirt on the outside. It's not going to be like the fruit itself spoiling. But when you think of things like a watermelon, a cantaloupe, honeydew melon, those are going to be at very high risk. And in terms of your eggs, it will be dependent on whether or not the person has washed those eggs and if they've removed that protective layer on the egg. Handing over to Deirdre if you have anything to add.
Well, I won't touch on the eggs that much because I think we all know that's a recipe for salmonella. But the fruits, sometimes I just have to say poor thing when I say the guys, especially with the June plum. Like everybody wants to be food safety conscious, so they take a plastic bag and they're peeling, and the poor June plum just spinning around in the dirt, right? And they mean well, So, I support them and I buy it and I wash it off. But someone who is immunocompromised, as Mr. Leng said, if you are doing chemotherapy for cancer, your oncologist will tell you avoid fruits, raw fruits that are peeled. It's best to buy it, you go home and you wash it and peel it yourself. And COVID would have taught us that. Same thing applies with vegetables. I mean, if you're not familiar with the cook shop, don't necessarily go and ask for raw veggies, right? Stick to your steamed veggies because there's no heat treatment after you get your food with your raw veggies. So it's risk management, as Mrs. Price said.
Thank you, ladies. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate the thorough responses to the questions and to our audience for having raised these questions. There are some questions in the chat, and I'm hoping that we are also going to treat with those. But let me just raise it here so maybe we can just get the responses from all of us. So one of the questions I saw, I make natural juices without preservatives. My question is, how long should I keep my juices refrigerated or frozen? For how long should I keep my juices refrigerated or frozen? And then the person went on to say, and that was Andrea. Andrea went on to say, also, I make a combination of pineapple, stardust, and ginger. Often 2 or 3 weeks, I notice there is a change of color, even though the taste remains the same. What do you suggest I do?
Well, I'm going to say come to the Quality Institute so we can train you in food product formulation because that's an enzyme issue, right? Normally, when you're working with pineapple, you will have significant color changes. It can get very, very dark in a short space of time, but that is something that food product formulation can assist with because even though we try to steer clear of food additives, they do have their purpose. So there's not too much of a microbial concern in these instances if you're being hygienic in your preparation, but these different compounds, these lovely fruits and food products that we get from Earth, they do have chemicals in them that cause different reactions that may not be as pleasant to experience visually.
All right, thank you very much for that. And yes, Lily, the presentation is going to be made available through our website and our YouTube channel. So persons will be able, and we'll share the link once we're done, we'll share the link and you can go to our YouTube channel or to our website and view the presentation in its entirety. A question from Ariana. Hi, Ariana. How long can food remain in the freezer? Apart from changes to texture, what happens to the microbial load? She asks. Who's gonna go?
I responded in the chat, Mr. Leng, but
all right, fine. All right, fine. If your freezer is able to make the food achieve an internal temperature of minus 18 degrees Celsius, you can get
that should be 6, sorry.
you can get 6 months to a year or more dependent on product. And Deidre did mention the Quality Institute, and we were going to mention the Quality Institute, but I'm sure as the chief promotion officer, Deidre had to mention that the Quality Institute of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica can assist in so many ways. So we'll speak about that in a little bit. But thanks to all of you for your questions. Thank you for your participation here today. We are appreciative of what it is that you have shared. We are appreciative of what you have shared so far. So thanks, Shantoy. Thanks to our panel supported by Deidre and Dion. And before you go, you have been such a great audience. Before you go, we have a few questions for you. And now these are easy questions. These are easy questions. So we are going to have some giveaways. These will be based on key points from today's session, including And here it is, safe temperature ranges and decision making after power outages. Now, I'm going to ask a question, and we're going to ask the questions, and we're going to ask persons to raise their hands. And as you know, once you raise your hands, the first person in line will take that question. So here's for the first question. The first question is a two-part because it's so easy. And I mean, Shantoy did so well in sharing these. So the first question is, what is a temperature range known as a danger zone for food safety? And we touched that all throughout. Oh, Carlton is out of the blocks. But Carlton, this is school's challenge. So you have to wait for part 2, or you have to tell me what the question is going to ask. So part 2 of that first question says, some people are more vulnerable to foodborne illnesses. Name one high-risk group. So the question, the two-part question, what is a temperature range known as a danger zone for food safety? And some people are more vulnerable to foodborne illnesses. Name one high-risk group. All right, so please go ahead.
Okay, so the danger range is from 5 degrees centigrade to 60. And a high-risk member, children, elderly, pregnant women. I gave you 3.
All right, Carlton, thank you very much for your response. Thank you so much for your response. And I see some persons putting their responses there in the chat. So Carlton, we will be in touch with you. Thank you very much for participating. Carlton, next time we might have to ask you to be one of our presenters as well. All right, so the next question, and I'm going to ask my panel to just help. Give one recommendation, only one now, and Carlton, thank you for having participated, but this question is not for you. Give one recommendation for ensuring food safety after a hurricane. And the hand has disappeared. Oh, Kimara is back. So Kimara, well, not back, but Kimara is raising her hand. And then O'Shane. So let us see. Give one recommendation for ensuring food safety after a hurricane. And panelists, please listen and help me out with this one. Kimara, please go ahead.
All right, so we ensure that for the frozen food, we pack them in igloos and stuff like that to ensure that they are kept at the correct temperature. And we, what's it called? The insulated containers and packaging.
All right, thank you very much. And I think we can accept that, Deidre. I think based on what I heard, I think that would be a suitable response. O'Shane?
Yes. Well, after the hurricane, one would assume that there is no electricity. So, of course, as best as possible to close or to keep the refrigerator closed as well as the freezer.
All right, and that too is a correct response. We will be in touch with all 3 of you, Carlton, Kimara, and O'Shane. Thank you for participating today. Now, we don't want you to run off yet because Deidre is now going to just ask you, and Deidre is already on screen. We're just asking you to give some feedback. And I'm also going to be sharing a link here in the chat and again via email to all of you who participated. We want to hear from you. One of the important questions we want you to answer is, what are some of the other opportunities we have? What are some of the other opportunities we have or what are some of the other things you'd want to hear from us as we present? If you notice, over the last year and a half, we have been doing several sessions. We did one on nutritional food panels. We did one in terms of squeeze the facts, what we should do for labeling our juices. We looked at labeling milk products. And so the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, through our public education initiatives, we want to help persons in industry. So thank you so very much for participating, and don't move. Don't move. I'm going to be sharing the link here, but sending it as well. And Deidre, please come now and just run through. I know you are on screen already, but just handing over for you to just get feedback from our people. Deidre?
Yes, I just saw one response, so I just edited so that anyone can respond. So let me go again. Are you seeing the screen? Or do I
Yes.
need to reshare? Okay. So you can go ahead, scan the QR code, and you should be able to respond. I'm only seeing 2 responses submitted, but how would you rate the overall effectiveness of the presentation? For those of you who are typing in the chat, you can continue using the chat in the interest of time. All right, I'm going to move on. Which topic was most valuable to you? All right. Okay. All right, and we have temperature danger zone and temperature abuse, impact of food safety risk on business operations, and I'm summarizing the topics, right? Post-hurricane food safety risk, and all topics were equally valuable. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm seeing in the chat more than on the forum itself. But you'll have the forum to use even after, so not an issue. All right. After this webinar, how confident do you feel in managing food safety risks related to temperature abuse? Okay, this is good. This is good. And this is one way of determining if learning has occurred. Persons feel more confident than before. This is very good. Wow. Very confident. Wow. Okay. All right, Mr. Lang. Your webinar is achieving its intended purpose. All right. What is one area that you are most likely to improve as a result of this presentation? Okay. Okay. I'm pleased to see staff training and awareness. So that means persons who are aligned with different entities, you're going to go back and transfer the knowledge. All right, that's good. That's good. Temperature monitoring and control. Very good, very good. And please tell them I sent you when you go to the restaurants and they have the chafing pans. If you're not seeing any steam or you don't see any evidence of heat under them, let them know that it's not a cosmetic feature, right? They should be in a hot water bath to prevent foodborne illnesses. All right. So give us a suggestion to improve future food safety webinars. Share presentation. Yes, we will share the presentation. Cross-section, the person who wrote cross-section, if you're not shy, can you expound in the chat?
Hi, are you hearing me, Mr. Elo?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I did write out a whole thing, but I'm not sure how it came out so short.
Oh, okay.
No, I was just saying, perhaps to invite a cross section of persons from different industry, well, from various parts of different industries. So, for instance, food manufacturing, hospitality, etc., etc. So that's what I thought could have, been done too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We appreciate that feedback, and we usually do. It's just unfortunate that you probably haven't attended some of the others. So Mr. Leng will tell you more when he wraps up, but like in the past, we've had webinars that focus on, say, allergens, and we've had doctors who specialize in allergy management, and we've had webinars on foodborne parasites, because even in this session, we spoke a lot about bacteria and we spoke about molds and stuff, but not often do we speak about foodborne parasites. And you see now with the event of a Melissa, you have migration of birds and even our pets, cats, they are vectors of some serious parasites that can make you very ill. So we had one webinar that focused on parasites. So we do try to include a wide cross-section of persons. So I implore you all to listen out for our webinars. Follow us. Look on our social media pages. Mr. Leng is always having these webinars as a part of the mandate of the Public Education Office. So I'm so happy for that feedback because I expect you to come back to many more webinars. Alrighty. How likely are you to recommend future BSJ events to a friend or a colleague? And this is the final question.
And we see you, Carlton. Please go ahead.
Sorry about that, I was muted. I heard you mention the help that the BSJ can offer with formulation. Can you give me some more information on especially formulation and process validation?
All right, so Deidre will give a quick response, and then we will be in touch with you since we have the details, and we will speak with you a little bit more, but Deidre will respond to you so that the rest of the audience can benefit from that question.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have training in food product formulation. So we don't do formulation for you, as in you can't come here as an incubator facility, but we do partner with the Jamaica Business Development Corporation so that if you don't have a facility to do your manufacturing, certainly you can go there and do pilot scale manufacturing. What we do, however, is train you in the standards that will help you to prepare your products safely. So for example, if you are making a sauce, we will show you how to make that sauce. We will walk you through what we call ideation to commercialization. So once you think of the concept, certainly the training covers that. How do you move from having that idea to actually making a shelf stable or a commercially sterile product? Because many times you can make a nice lemonade, for example, at home, but if it is that you're going to sell it to the public, it needs to last more than the 3 days that it would last in your refrigerator. And so we will have to walk you through the different Codex standards, right? And that will tell you what food additives are safe to use, what are the limits, because there are restrictions to some of these different food additives, what different technology, food processing technology techniques you need to apply. So if it's pasteurization, like was mentioned earlier, you need to know about that. If it's rapid cooling, you need to know about that. If your product is, say, sausages, ham, pizza, you name it, whatever it is, we certainly can guide you through the entire process and make you aware of different things that you're not considering. So if your business is going to take off and go into the European Union, etc., then we will guide you on technical barriers to trade, what are the requirements in those areas. And so if you have a novel product, you may become a very big exporter coming out of that training because you have this thing that nobody else has, and we will equip you with the tools to gain access to Canada, Europe, Asia, Africa, you name it. So just reach out to us. I dropped my email in the chat earlier, and we'll send you the course outline, which contains much more valuable information on the course offering. And it's a 2-day course with 1 day being face-to-face because you'll actually be making product as a part of that undertaking. Hopefully I answered. Okay.
Thank you, Deidre. Thank you, Carlton. And thanks all for your participation in today's session. Now, Deidre was getting feedback live and direct, but we have also shared a link in the chat, which I will share via email with all of you who participated. At this point, we have not had a lot of persons responding to the link, and we are asking you to just respond to that as well, but I will share it via email. As we come to the close of today's session, and you have been making your comments here, we recognize that it has been helpful. We hope that for every single person who participated, you learned something today. We ask that you please complete the evaluation form that has been shared. I beg of you. As we have given to you, we ask you to give of us, or to give to us. Your feedback is extremely important. It really helps us to plan other sessions, to identify other topics that we can present, to hear what are the things that industry may benefit from. And so we invite you to complete the evaluation at the link. It helps the BSJ continue to improve and strengthen our public education program. And that is why, in addition to our training courses, which come at a cost, we offer so many awareness sessions at no cost to you, getting presenters not only from the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, but partnering sometimes with our sister agencies and other ministries to ensure that the information that is needed comes to you. In closing, let me remind everyone, all of us together, that food safety is not just about compliance. It is about protecting lives. Your life, my life. When in doubt, throw it out. When in doubt, especially after disruptions to electricity or refrigeration, it is always safer to discard food than to risk illness. And as Shantoy said, when in doubt, throw it out. The decisions we make about food safety protect not only ourselves, but our families. And if it is that we are in business, our customers, and particularly those among us who are most vulnerable. And we have already identified our children, our elderly, and those who have illnesses that compromise their immune system. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, I thank our presenter Shantoy, our team of panelists, Dion Price, Deidre Taylor, and support from Joanna Sparks, who was unable to make it today, and Stacy Thelwell. Thanks to all of you, our participants, for joining us today, and for all of the team from the Communication Customer Service Branch working behind to ensure today's success. We appreciate your engagement and your commitment to food safety. And for the rest of the day, as you go to have your lunch, do ensure that you choose wisely. Have a safe and a productive day.